Welcome to the Steve and Cimino Says Boom Show, issue number 38.
Ball.
Hey everyone, welcome to Pop XP. And before the show starts, make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to get notifications when we go live and we upload awesome new content. And don't forget, if you can, make sure to share our stream on all your social media outlets. We appreciate it, and thanks for helping us grow the Pop XP channel.
Boom, 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 boom. Issue number 38. Woo, hoo, hoo, hoo. And you know what? We always get a lot of guest stars. You know, we're overwhelmed by them. But sometimes I like to sit back and settle down and get a little teaching. So I like to teach Niall a thing or two. But Niall, tell us what's up on the Pop XP.
Oh, everyone knows the drill. Make sure to look below, click that subscribe button, and smash that bell to get notifications when we go live and we upload new content like tonight's episode. And the professor is in the house with some knowledge of cosmic levels. Gentlemen.
Me and Steve don't make no bones about it. You're probably either going to get an Avengers comic, a Defenders comic, a Thor comic, but definitely a Marvel comic. We even had Niall below us here saying, like, maybe we should do DC. And I told him, screw you, Niall, it's our show. We don't care. So, Steve, give Niall some more of a teaching, because Steve is going to take it away in a teaching today. Woo! What are we doing, Steve?
Well, you know, we are going to take a little trip back in time to a story that I loved when I first read it. But in recent years, because of events on the MCU, some of the stuff in this issue has gained rather important relevance. So this is a double a banger right there for this story. One, I just loved it when I read it, and two, there's a lot of people hunting these issues down these days. So without further ado, in 1987, I got into Thor heavily, and I went down to my local comic shop, which was very sparse, and he just happened to have a huge pile of Thor back issues, and they were the cheapest issues in the store. The Marvel 2-in-1s, the Marvel team-ups, and the Thors were so cheap. The Spider-Mans and the X-Men's was so expensive, and I was like, you can keep those. Look at those Thors. I was just loading up stacks. I was like, whoa, yes, get these Thors. So, as I was putting my issues together, I came across a 4-issue story arc. Now, we're only going to be dealing with 2 of the issues today because of space limitations. But for those of you who are wanting to get the whole story, we're going to be talking about a story that began in issue 242 of Thor and finished in issue 245. This episode here, I'm going to be dealing with issues 244 and 245. But to get you caught up before we actually get to that first page of issue 244, in issue 242, guess who wants to come to Earth, comes to the 20th century? That's other master of time, Zarrko. Okay, so he comes to Earth, and he's got with him this magnificent assistant called a servitor, just a huge big guy with a big red face. He comes down there. And this isn't your usual, I'm going to come down here and conquer Earth. This is Len Wein doing the writing, John Buscema doing the penciling, and by the way, talk about sharp penciling. Oh. And believe it or not, Joe Sinnott doing the inking. Whoa, we are going to be blown away. I tell you, when you see this art, you're getting blown away. So, why is Zarrko coming to Earth? Okay, if he's not going to come down there and trying to start slap around, Thor or take over the 20th century. So when I first read that issues 242 and 243, Thor's like, well, what do you want? Well, Zarrko basically says, if you don't come with me to the 50th century, your 20th century is going to be destroyed, okay, by the Time Twisters. And Thor's like, who in the hell are the Time Twisters? What are you talking about? He goes, well, you better jump in my little time cube and come to the 50th century to help me out. Otherwise, you're doomed. And that's where we crack open with issue 244. Oh, look at those beautiful Time Twisters. Oh, my word. That's Rick Buckler, of course, doing the cover. Joe Sinnott doing the inking. Okay, it's February 1976, by the way, for those of you who are taking note of that. So I want to go to page 1. So Thor gets his first glimpse right there of the so-called Time Twisters. And he's basically saying, well, they look tall and gangly, but, I think I can get out there and just smack these guys around and stop it, But please take a close look at the visuals. Again, John is also the same age group as me, so he's seen many episodes of Star Trek. For some strange reason, aliens have that look. I don't know why. It just happens to be that way. They're usually bold. Their head's a little bit bigger, and they got those big, huge, dark eyes. Okay, and I just love it. I'm like, okay, all right. Let's see what these guys are going to do. Page 2. So basically, Thor's basically saying, okay, I'm going to run out there and just smack him around my hammer. Okay. And just for context, that is Jane Foster you're seeing right there. Now, for those of you who really know your stuff, that's not just Jane Foster. Inside her body, part of her soul is the Lady Sif. Okay, they joined together in issue 236 for all of you continuity maniacs out there.
Okay, Steve, hold on for 1 second. I have to say something because if anybody knew the Amsco Marvel World playset that came out in 1976, basically the same time this comic was hitting the racks, they had like 50 pieces, right? And what is remarkable about that, like a lot of them had their alter egos on the other side. The Jane Foster piece in that, when you turned it around, it had Lady Sif. So they were just taking it from these comics at this same time. And that I just wanted to point that out. And I loved when this was going on, when Jane Foster and Lady Sif were together. And I remembered that piece in the Amsco Marvel World playset. It's one of the best Marvel toys ever that came out in 1976. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
All right. So Jane Foster's like, well, wait a minute. If these characters have come all this way, they're going to have a certain amount of power. And by the way, if you take a look at that center little panel where Zarrko has got that face of contemplation, does that look like Lex Luthor to you? It's just incredible. Whenever I see it, I always see Lex Luthor right now. I'm like, God, it's Lex Luthor. So he's like, okay, I'm going to show Thor just how powerful these guys are. What he's going to do is he's going to sacrifice his own people of the 50th century. And by the way, Zarrko is not a nice ruler. He is a tyrant. He keeps these people in just depravity. And, they're struggling each by day while he's living in some beautiful, huge big castle. So let's go to the next page. All right. So there again, his face appears, in the skies above his people there. This is Earth of the 50th century. And he's like, hey, I'm going to offer 1 month of unlimited energy usage. Okay. For any of you who wants to go and, fight the Time Twisters. And so all these poor people, they have no real weapons. They're picking up like bits of metal and like, yeah, we're going to go and do it. And Thor's like, oh, I don't like this idea. I don't, and Zarrko's like, well, no, it's just, they want to protect their land. They want to protect their home. So let's see what happens next page. Now, the Time Twisters, they seem to be just on their own little time clock. They're not interested in anyone. They've not talked to anyone. They're just walking around with observing with those Star Trek faces. And if you're wondering what Star Trek episode I'm talking about, if you remember an episode called The Cage,
Yes.
with those guys with the big heads with the pulsing things with Captain Pike. I know I'm cross-streaming here, please. I'm cross-streaming.
That's the pilot episode.
Yes, so there you go, Niall. I know that you love those aliens. And of course, now take a look. Look at those poor little humans. They're just running forward, okay? And then look, the time twisters are just like, oh God, okay, let's just get rid of these people. Let's just fire some bolts of energy. So next page. So the people are like getting really stirred up, and then the time twisters start firing beams out of their eyes. So what they do is they kill these people in two ways. One, by returning them to being babies and nothing, or making them so old that they disseminate. You know, next page, you'll see. It just turns them to dust. Okay, so now we know the time twisters are indeed extremely powerful. Okay. And, you know, you can see Thor in the third panel here. He's just like, oh my, he's not happy with that. He's not happy at all to see these people sacrificed while he wasn't doing anything. Now we have a little quick view here of, I mean, look at Asgard there. Look at that with that beautiful rainbow bridge. And you have a little vision there of Odin sitting there. But do you? Now, any of you guys that know this era of Thor, if you are very clever, that isn't Odin. Okay? That is not Odin. Okay? John, do you know who that is? That's someone disguised as Odin.
I vaguely.
Yes.
I do remember. Is he on Earth? Is Odin on Earth at this time?
He was on Earth and he got transported. He transported himself to Asgard.
Okay. I might be wrong here, but is that when he was wearing the overalls when he was down on Earth and all that?
Yes, that was when he was called Orin.
Yeah. Okay. And this is after that. Okay. I don't remember, but it's been a while. But go ahead.
Yeah. Now, of course, again, it's not prevalent to the story, but just to let you guys know, and any of you people out there that are screaming at the screen right now saying, "That's not Odin," I know it's not Odin. That is actually the Mangog, disguised as Odin.
Okay, and then he comes. Yeah, okay, I remember that. Okay,
but basically, again, the Vizier is like, "Hey, Odin, don't you think you were a little bit tough on, you know, banishing your son again? You know, after he chose that he wanted to be with Jane Foster, because at this time, Odin's still like, I don't want you mixing with that mortal wench." That's exactly what he said, by the way. All right, next page. So basically, in this, you know, in this setup, there's like little clues here as to Odin is being extremely harsh, and anyone who knows is a little bit clever. It's like, well, wait a minute, something's wrong. This information here is not revealed until issue 250 for those Thor maniacs, but we're going to switch on to the next page from now on. All right, so now it's time for Thor to get involved. We've just seen those poor people from the 5th century return, you know, turned into dust. Okay, and there they are. The time twisters are still just walking around the streets. You know, like, well, you know, these parasites aren't going to do anything good, but they haven't come across Thor yet. So Thor's, you know, I'll get your attention. And there's Mjolnir right there, you know, whipping up some nice fire around them. So finally they notice. Next page. So, look at that. They're finally speaking. So Thor manages to get these guys to speak. You know, so basically it says here a question. At our inception, it was decreed all questions must be answered. God, Len Wein. So Thor's like, all right, knowledge of thy purpose, thine origins, whence dost thou come? Whence dost thou go? And why dost thou sunder entire planets in thy wake? Oh, God, just to sunder planets. I just love that type of speak. So basically, Thor's wondering, well, why are you traveling and then destroying planets? Now, the time twisters, as they're called, are totally unaware that when they visit a planet, they just end up destroying it. They make a mess of like the space-time continuum, and the planet is just completely messed up. They are totally unaware. And they explain to Thor that, you know, basically, we are on a quest for knowledge, and we are traveling back through time, okay? And that is our mission. So Thor's like, well, wait a minute. Your mission is disastrous. What are you doing? You have to abandon thy quest. All right, next page. Take a look at that beautiful page. Look at that beautiful alien.
I love it.
It says here, your request is understood, worldling. But what you ask is quite impossible. What matters to the destruction of a mere thousand worlds to we who were born in the midst of chaos? Our father was the ultimate nova, the death of the primal sun. Our mother was the universe, shattering the Holocaust that followed. Now this is why me and John love this era. We just love that over melodramatic dialogue. It just goes to our bones. Okay, this is despite what devastation we cause, in our duty to journey to the dawn of all that is. For only from time's beginning may we carry on our appointed task. All right, so we can get an idea here that we're not just dealing with pure black and white villains, characters that are saying, okay, we want to destroy planets because we love it. They apparently are on some sort of mission. Okay, so we're going to discover what they're going to be doing. Next page. So Thor's like, all right, I've tried talking with you. Okay, you're not doing as you're told, so now I'm going to make you do it. Okay. But amongst the ruins, we have this little guy here who is a survivor, the lone survivor of those poor 50th century humans that attacked the Time Twisters before. Okay. And so basically, I think his name is Derek. I think his name is Derek. And he's like, okay, Zarrko did this and he's going to pay. So he goes walking off. That's a little subplot that's building right there. Next page. So here we go. Now we're going to get to see what Thor can do against the Time Twisters. All right. The first thing is that their bolts of energy, their chronal rays, have no effect on the Asgardians. Asgardians live for millions of years, so they're like, "What? Okay, this is the first time they've never had their powers work." So Thor's like, "Yeah, you've never met Asgardians before." Next page. So basically, as you do when you are that powerful, you're like, well, I'm not going to get my hands dirty here. So we're just going to call forth all sorts of different warriors from all over every single era that we can go. And you're going to do our dirty work. So as you can see, he pulls all these guys out, regular American soldiers, pirates, Romans. There's a Civil War soldier right there. And that guy looks like a Neanderthal. Next page. Now, again, this is where John Buscema he just kills it every time. Whenever there's a massive scene where people are all fighting together, him and Kirby they're just the masters of it, right? And then, you know, this is the Asgardians' forte. These poor guys haven't got a clue what they're doing. I mean, take a look at that last panel where that guy's screaming. All right, next page. All right, so the fight's going on. It's going very well. And then, we get a little view of the Lady Sif right there because, you know, Jane Foster's getting involved. Okay, next page. All right. So the Time Twisters realize that, you know, they're little warriors that they pulled out from the times. They're not going to be able to beat Thor and the Asgardians. So they're going to have to take some, you know, real action right here. So they start actually having the planet's tectonic plates actually rise up and actually fight the Asgardians. That's how powerful these guys are. Next page. And it's getting so bad. Zarrko's like starting to panic right there. And there he is with the servitor. And he's like, I trusted these Asgardians, servitor, and they have failed me. There was only one fate. There's only one path of action left open to us. Of course, what they're going to do is they're going to jump into their ship and they're going to get out of there. The Time Twisters are going to be fading away, and of course they're going to leave all this chronal destruction behind them. They're basically going to wreck the entire 50th century Earth. So basically, Thor has failed. Next page. Now, for some strange reason, okay, Thor and the rest of his Asgardians do not die. But as you can see, that there is the result of the Time Twisters visiting your timeline. Your entire planet is just bathed in an awful chronal fire. Everything is destroyed. There's no life left. And as you can see right there, the distraught Thor in the last panel right there. And he just basically says, and because of us, the planet Earth is dead. So, as you can see, issue 244, not the most magnificent issue for Thor. He went on a mission. Usually he runs in there with his hammer flying. But now he turns out not quite to be powerful enough to deal with the Time Twisters. So, next issue. Oh, don't you just love that cover right there? It is just beautiful. God of Thunder versus the Servitor while the universe crumbles. The temple at the end of time. Now what is that going to mean? All right, first page. All right, so as you can see, the Asgardians and of course Jane Foster are just sitting there on this completely devastated Earth from the 50th century. The Time Twisters have faded away and have left utter and complete destruction. Nothing that Thor was able to do succeeded, and all they can do is just mourn right there. Next page. So they're actually, talking to each other, like working on what's going on, and all of a sudden, whoop, Zarrko pops up out of nowhere. Zarrko's back, and he's like, oh, you failed me, and because of you, an entire planet is dead. Okay, next page. So Thor tries to speak, and the Servitor's like, I told you to listen to my master. And Thor's like, wait a minute. I'm going to let you hit me once, and I'm going to smack you right back right there. So he uses Mjolnir to put, Servitor on his back. Next page. So they're having this big fight and tussle. Now, while they're doing that, that guy, Derek, okay, from the 50th century, he comes out of the little ship. So he'd obviously stowawayed onto the little time block that Zarrko has. Next page. So off he goes, and as you can see, he goes back to see where his family and everyone lived. There isn't a single person left alive. Okay, and this is what's good right now. I think it's because of the inner being of Sif. She's like, you know what? I've got to jump in here and stop these guys from fighting. Okay, because Thor gets a little bit headstrong sometimes. She's like, I'm going to let my hammer do the thing right there. So Jane Foster here says something very important. She says, maybe we did fail to save the Earth, but only in this century. The Time Twisters are still on the loose. And unless we pursue them, the 20th century will be next to fall. And then Zarrko's basically saying here, what does that matter to me, woman? My world has already been destroyed. Why should I and my servitor be bothered to face the Time Twisters now? And then Fanville basically says, to gain vengeance, perhaps, Zarrko. And then Thor basically says, you know how they can't speak normal. You can't just say, my buddy Fanville. The dashing Fanville speaks truly, Zarrko. What if I were to say, the world might yet be saved? And then basically, this is interesting how Zarrko right now is not being very smart, and the Asgardians are being smart. Thor's being smart right here. Because Zarrko's completely given way to despair here. He basically said, then I would call you a lunatic Asgardian. How does one go about restoring life to a smoldering ruin? Okay, next page. So here it is. This is the crucial part here of what the story is. Okay. And it says basically Thor is trying to speak some sense to Zarrko. He says, Zarrko, the Time Twisters doth travel backward through time, touching and destroying the earth each 30 centuries. What if we were to travel forward in time to the 80th century, perhaps, and defeat the Time Twisters there? And then finally Zarrko, okay, because he's supposed to be the smart one, basically says, wait a minute. It's an intriguing idea, but why don't we go one step further? suppose instead of the 80th century, we travel to the very end of time and prevent the time twisters from ever coming into being. So there's their mission. They are going to travel to the end of time to actually stop the time twisters from coming into being and to actually save the 50th century, 30th century, 20th century, everything. So, boom, they jump in his chronal craft. Off they go. Next page. Now, remember, they're going so far into the future that even his ship is having a hard time right there. I just love the way, as you can see, the ship is bending here. So Thor's answer is just to squeeze the ship back out again with his bare hands.
Asgardian strength.
Yeah, Asgardian strength. All right, next
it.
page. And then again, this is an interesting part where these guys have been at each other's throats for the entire storyline right here. And Servitor is like, okay, let me help you. So between them, they manage to keep the ship going, and they succeed. They travel all the way to the end of time, just before the heat death of the entire universe. Next page. There it is. It's a temple right there, and it's the only thing left standing in the entire universe, the last thing going. Okay, so then they're going to have to get past this, and there's like a little force field around it. Next page. So Thor and Servitor use their combined powers to break through, and they're going to get into this temple. Next page. And then there's like these little guardians there. They're called the Protectoroids, And so Zarrko's like, well, wait a minute. I'm not meant for this type of fighting. What the hell's going on around here? The Servitor jumps in and sacrifices himself for Zarrko. Next page. Actually sacrifices and kills one of them, and then that allows Thor to kill the other two Protectoroids, which now means that Thor and the others have access to this temple where they expect to find the time twisters. Next page. So here we go. I remember when I first read this, I was like, what the bloody hell? Look at those people. There they are. They're the time twisters right there, sitting there, those little eggs, And Thor's like, all right, I'm just going to smash them. Okay. And then here we have this old guy turn up right there. Okay. Smash those nurture pods, and you condemn untold generations to the black pits of ignorance. You will prevent a future yet unborn of priceless knowledge of the past. How could you be so cruel? So basically, Thor's like, well, I'm going to have to explain to this guy exactly what these beings and these pods end up doing. And this is an important part. If you take a look at the second panel in the last sequence there, it says, I am he who remains. Now, I think that some of you who are watching this show may have watched the Loki TV series on Netflix. Okay. Well, guess who that character was at the end of episode 6? That was he who remains. Now, some of you right now, the coin has just dropped. I can sense the coin dropping right now. When I saw the original episode, I was just devastated by how cruddy the episode was, because my version of He Who Remains is this old guy right here. Look at his face, wrought with, age and sorrowful wisdom. And what did we get instead? Just that actor acting like a clown coming out there with his Birkenstocks on and that stupid little hat. Okay. So anyway, for those of you who want to know the origins of He Who Remains, this is the origin, and we can thank Len Wein for that. All right, next page. All right. So Thor's like, well, wait a minute. I don't want to listen to you. I'm just going to destroy these pods. And then I like the way he says, stripling, stop. And he calls Thor a stripling and just takes his power away and just leaves him like that. So Thor's on his ass right there. And he's going, you got to listen to me, So basically what this He Who Remains is saying is that the three beings inside those eggs contain all the knowledge of this universe, the universe that's just about to die. And it's going to be his gift to the new universe. So don't kill these guys, Thor. They're going to be a gift. They're going to have all this knowledge that they can partake and give to the new beings that rise up after the heat death of this universe and the creation of the new. Okay? Next page. So now it's going to get to the point where Thor and Jane Foster basically explain to He Who Remains that what he's actually created is something that turns out to be evil. And these guys do not go through time partaking and giving knowledge. But every time they visit a planet, they unsuspectingly destroy it. Their presence alone destroys the planet after planet. They are basically world killers. Okay? So they managed to convince, He Who Remains. Basically, he's like, okay, you guys better go. And as you can see by the look on their faces right there, because the heat death of the universe is just starting right there. And even Thor says, okay, then comest thou with us, old one. Thou hast discharged thy duty most nobly. Leave thy sleepers to the spinning fates and flee. And then He Who Remains basically says, there are things left to be done and only I can do. Save yourself while you can, and know that you take with you an old man's gratitude. All right, next page. So, that's Guardians and Jane Foster jump into Zarrko's ship. Off they go, leaving this elder being right here, looking at the pods. And as you can see there, it says, terminate life systems. And he's got a little tear coming from his eye, and he's going to have to put an end to these beings. Okay, next page. So, Zarrko's ship arrives in this 50th century, and guess what? There it is. The world has been renewed. It did not get destroyed. And guess who is the new ruler? The guy that came out of the ship, Mr. Derek. And he is the guy right there. And look at Zarrko's face right there on the 6th panel. He's like, wait a minute. No. Thor, help me. Take power. Thor's like, no, we're going to be leaving. You're going to be gone. Okay, next page. So basically, Thor and the others get returned to the 20th century. The timelines have been restored. The time twisters have obviously been killed. They don't have to worry about that. And the events of issue 242, which started the whole thing off, it doesn't happen. Okay, so for some context here, to finish this off, the ramifications of this story go on for years and are touched on by various writers. And funnily enough, I think Mr. Roy Thomas actually did a little bit of writing here in Avengers West Coast in issue 61, I think it is, or 62, where he actually features the Time Twisters, but under their new name, the Timekeepers.
Yes.
Okay, so what happens is it's revealed later on, and for those of you who are continuity watchers, get your pens and paper out. You are going to need to read What If Volume 2, 36 through 39. Okay, and it basically reveals that He Who Remains is the last director of the TVA. That's what that is revealed. Also, that issue reveals that when Thor went back with Zarrko to this timeline, it created a parallel universe, 2 different split timelines. In one timeline, the Time Twisters are killed, basically. In the other timeline, the Time Twisters are not killed, okay? And then the Timekeepers come along, and that's when it gets really complicated, because then we have Immortus and Kang, the TVA. It's a huge story. And of course, this is a lot of stuff that's been borrowed from the Loki Netflix series. Funny thing is that what actually drove me nuts is that when you look at Marvel Wiki, okay, which is their Marvel database, which, by the way, is almost impossible to use because of the ads, but whatever. They actually have the Loki TV series as continuity. Okay, it just drives me nuts. Okay, because it's like, well, wait a minute. In the TV series, the Time Twisters were revealed just to be like androids. Okay, and it's just like, well, keep the TV series and the comics separate, please. Okay. Now, so to follow up and to finish this off in the ramifications, this little story by Len Wein in 1977 is finally touched upon in a massive story called Avengers Forever. It's a 12-issue series that came out in like 1998, and it features Kang at his finest, and basically features all the plot points of all the Kang stories, all the Immortus stories.
That was by Kurt Busiek, right? Kurt Busiek?
Yes, with assistance by Roger Stern, who is the master of Kang. Okay. Mm-hmm. The only other person, that knows as much about Kang as those two guys is Mr. Steve Englehart. So basically, we get the whole history, and I really, please, if you get a chance, if you read Avengers Forever #8, it's an incredible issue. It tells you about the Space Phantom, Avengers 3. It tells you about Thor 282. It just goes on and on and on. And then features the final resolution of the Timekeepers and their plot to try and take over all the time streams, and how Immortus and Kang end up defeating him. And basically, in Avengers Forever #12, Kang blows them away, kills them. Now, I don't know. I've been out of the Marvel Universe for a while. I don't know whether the Timekeepers have ever come back. But at the end of Avengers Forever, Kang actually just wipes them out. And basically, Kurt Busiek's job to establish Kang as a major player, a major villain in the Marvel Universe has succeeded. And it's just like, wow, don't mess with Kang, which sets up his later story where Kang, ends up fighting the Avengers for like 12 issues in a row. It's like his grand opus. But what I love about this story is I read it time and time and time again as a kid. I had no idea that it would have all these ramifications and spread its tentacles out through the rest of the Marvel Universe. Lucky enough, I was able to follow them and, and then read all the tentacles, and it wasn't until Avengers Forever that I was able to actually go, oh, that's what's been going on, But it's just a fabulous story, which I picked up in England in 1988 probably. And I probably picked them up for like, 30 pence a piece. And they gave me so much fun, so much enjoyment. And it's just been so much fun to watch as the years passed. People come up to me, or I get, when I'm doing a sale and someone says, do you have issues 244, 245 of Thor? Man, why are you trying to pick up these issues? Like, well, I don't know. I don't know. I'm like, you want He Who Remains, don't you? Come on. Of course, I have to slap around right there. Like, well, He Who Remains, la, la, la. So here we are. We've come full circle. Those issues that only I was interested in back in 1988, have now become sought after. And everyone who watched that TV series ended up going back to this story. Okay. So I just wanted to showcase it today. It showcases a lot of great stuff. The visuals, of course, are beautiful. This is John Buscema, still at his peak. Mm-hmm. Joe Sinnott, of course, still at his peak after 30 years of inking, still going strong. And Len Wein, writer editor, which means that you couldn't. There was no interference from anyone. There was no other editor to say no. This was his vision completely, and I just love Len's run. And it was just part of a beautiful era of Thor. The whole 1970s of Thor is great. So I just wanted to showcase that. So Niall, what do you think of that massive story?
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. And as I was mentioning to you before, we started the show, the art just blows me away. The whole cosmic universe that they created, it doesn't look like any of the other books of the time. They definitely had an element to them. The way the colors popped, the special effects, if you want to call it, with some of the cosmic
Just so you know,
clouds and
Niall, it was
energy.
Niall. Just so you know, it was Len Wein's wife that was doing the coloring in that book.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah,
They
she
did such
colored
a
it a lot.
such a great job, and it's just the expanse of what they did, because now you weren't just solely on Earth, right? Now they just like went full ham. They just went right at it into the universe, creating these crazy characters, and all this stuff's going on. You got Thor doing this, everything's going crazy, and then you have Derek, which I just love. It's like, oh no, this and that, and then oh hey Derek,
Hi, Derek.
and at the end, Derek is the supreme ruler, which I absolutely thought was great. But no, this is another great issues you brought to the table here. And again, like someone like me that's now exploring all the stuff you guys are introducing me to, I have some more stuff from my library.
Okay, first, now can you put up the cover of one of those issues, 244 or
Sure.
245, either one. First off, when you see that little box right there and you see the little circle and you see that Thor,
Yes.
you knew it was an awesome issue. First off, that image is awesome. And those are the best Thors when you see that image on there. Okay. Especially with the circle around there. The 60s and 70s Marvel, you can tell Kevin Feige and all those guys back, that Marvel MCU guys, they had a pretty good awareness, especially the first generation of phase 1, phase 2. You get a couple pieces here and there, Loki and stuff, but it just shows you why the 60s and 70s Marvels were just the greatest comics ever written, ever. Like they just got better and better and better. The art is perfect. It's just I think there was nothing better. The Marvel Comics group, all that was just exquisite. Now, number 2, first we want to throw out for Zarrko. Everybody should know that his first appearance was in Journey into Mystery. What was it, 86, back in 1962. So he was a longtime villain of Thor. He kind of popped back in. They called him the Tomorrow Man or the Man of Tomorrow and stuff. Like I remember Dan Jurgens throwing out when he was doing his Thor run, the coming next, the Man of Tomorrow, trying to make it like almost sounding like Superman's coming in there, because he wrote Superman for a million years too prior. But there's always something good, even in an issue that wasn't supposed to be like the greatest thing in the world. I mean, just saying, that's how good all that stuff was. And Thor, obviously being the cosmic level guy, that's and Buscema loved drawing like those Vikings and the Warriors 3. He was more into that. And Steve, just so you know, when all those Thors were all piled in the back there, they were next to all those Conans too, because nobody wanted that crap either back then.
Yes.
And the funniest thing, you had some of the best art ever drawn in comic books in those comics. John Buscema with Sinnott or who was that? Alcala?
Yeah, Alfredo Alcala, yeah.
Alfredo Alcala, whatever it may be. It's just incredible. Now, Thor, unbelievable. You can tell Len wasn't as, because nobody's watching over him. And I remember this directly from Roy. Roy said nobody could write Thor like Thor. Stanley and Roy wrote the pseudo-Shakespearean speech correctly. They had to the only other person Roy told me that could write it without not needing much editorial was Jerry Conway. You can see by Len's writing, he's a little over dramatic in some of his words. It was still fantastic. I still loved it, but there was thy, they, thy, they. He did that a lot. If you read those, he goes a little too much into that, but if you love that stuff like I did, I couldn't get enough of it. It was like sugar. You just keep pouring it in. Give me more of these. I say thee nays. Loved it. Anyways, another thing too. But that was just such a perfect moment for comics. And it's funny, like I said, people who don't know this stuff and they come back to you, Steve, and they want to buy these things. I like that because what a lot of those runs are forgotten, and they don't know how powerful they really are. And sometimes, you got like people when they read it today, it's kind of like, yeah, it's okay and all that stuff. I feel sorry for some of them because they didn't see it. You got to always remember what it was at the time, and what it was at the time was revolutionary. I mean, it was just was so Marvel was so ahead of DC at that time too. It just was
Oh yeah.
it wasn't even close, and DC didn't even come close till like a few decades later. But I'm just saying, you can just tell by the energy from a Marvel comic. You can pick up any comic from that time, and there was always something good. No matter, even if you didn't like the character, you could still pick it up, and there was still something electric about it. Now, in closing, once again, I loved Zarrko. I did. I liked. I loved Thor pushing the metal, and the metal looks like just bending and all that stuff. Just the power in it, and the cape. Nobody drew Thor. Only Kirby and John Buscema are the greatest Thor. I'm sorry, Walt Simonson. I know you're a fan of these, especially of Kirby, but get in the back seat, brother. The two front seats is Jack Kirby and John Buscema for Thor. I like no. If you look at Thor's face in every panel, it's just Thor. Like that is supposed to be what he looks like. It's just so powerful and majestic. I always loved it. And to prove I'm right, all those promo arts and all those toys and all that stuff always showed the John Buscema Thor. It was never Kirby's because Kirby's was a little not contemporary at the time, but you'll always get a John Buscema Thor on all that stuff that was coming out from 76 to 1980, all that new product, which was the greatest time for toys ever. But that's why. So take me back once again. I forgot about the Mangog coming later. That was great. I hated the Mangog, like he bothered me because I just wanted Thor to beat him up so badly. It was like, and he's always trying to start Ragnarok. He's always trying to pull that.
John, he's got the power of a billion beings.
Billion beings. billion beings of his race, because wasn't his race all consumed in him? He was his entire race, right?
Yes, that was actually a mistake on Odin's part. He thought by punishing them, he was just going to put them all into one being, and then he realized he'd made the ultimate villain. But I think it was an issue in issue 199. I think Odin disperses them, releases them out of Mangog, so he's never been that powerful again.
Yeah, and he's always been. He's kind of turned into some sort of lackey. He's just kind of like a beatbag. He's like what Ulik is. These guys were so awesome in the 70s, but if you see him today, he kind of just takes. He's just a filler villain that kind of just takes.
That's actually 100% correct. The last time I saw him, he was a lackey of Thanos in the Dan Jurgens run.
I remember that. Oh, yeah. That's with the John Romita Jr., correct? John Romita Jr. art.
No, it was
no, that was John Romita Jr. And that's when Thor had the shield and all that stuff. And then
okay, yeah, maybe you're right.
Thanos but I got to admit, there was one great part in that when he grabs Thor and he bites him with his mouth. Remember, he puts the whole mouth in Thor and all that energy is just going everywhere. Yeah, that was good. And then just sadly, Jim Starlin didn't want anybody to touch Thanos, and he retconned that, and he made that one of these fake Thanoses that he put out there. Remember that? Yeah, which pissed me off because Thor beat Thanos, and he always should beat Thanos. Should take a lot, but one-on-one when they're going at it, and that was awesome. So Starlin, it never happened.
Well, I think after what happened, after what Jason Aaron did with Thanos, I think maybe Jim should come back and retcon all of that away. Because I don't know whether you were aware of it, but Jason Aaron did this origin story where it was revealed that Thanos had all these kids.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is basically say, Jason, you do realize that Thanos hates the concept of life.
Yeah, he's a nihilist. He's a nihilist.
He eviscerated his own mother trying to find out where he came from. So why would he? Anyway, we're about to hit like an explosion right now. I'm gonna back off. I'm gonna back off right there.
Wait, and another beating Thanos got, just other than Squirrel Girl that you're still pissed off about. But you got to remember, Kazar beat up Thanos for love. Do you remember that? Those 2 issues by Adam Kubert. Adam. They're fighting, and then finally he's like, "But there's one thing I gotta fight for. I fight for that you don't, is love." And
Hey, he's like the tea kettle that's starting to boil.
Yeah, that's I think that was 1997. It's just
yeah, those Kazar issues. Oh, don't feel bad. Joe Casey had a python snake choke out the Hulk, and he passed out. If you can believe that. And just so you know, back in like the early 2000s, I cornered him at a convention, and I said it was the most. That's when I was a cuckoo, and I said it was one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen. The Hulk, who can basically move the moon, couldn't even take a python snake off his face and passed out. And the Hulk doesn't even need to breathe. All right. I digress.
Yes.
I digress. Back to
Tell
Thor.
him why you're mad. Tell him why you're mad.
Okay. So anyways, Steve, a beautiful issue. We hope people out there respect these issues, and that's why we keep. Yes, we'll try to diversify a little bit more. We're going to have Niall to take us on a trip, and who knows what he's going to show us. Hopefully he
the
keeps
world
it.
of DC.
It could be the Care Bears. It could be Strawberry Shortcake.
Hopefully he keeps
Rainbow
it
Bright, bro.
pre 86 and back at least. Please.
New 52 all the way.
Hey, you know what? We have to give Niall carte blanche to let loose whatever he wants to let loose.
There you go.
Yeah, so Niall, you're going to have to pick something out. We'll see. Well, that'll be a future episode, probably before the end of the year. We got a couple more guest stars and some fun stuff coming up, but we always come back. So we'll see what Niall picks up. Let's see, and if he can take, and hopefully either he'll either pass the test or we'll get rid of him. I don't know what's gonna be.
I'm the brains of this technology.
So any what? We have to be careful, John. He may reprogram us remotely, so we'll be like, "Oh, like I can't move. What's going on?" And just be like,
"Yeah, Niall, you are wonderful."
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm typing what you say.
Yeah.
Niall, let me put my bank routing number into your email.
Oh, you should have, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah. So Steve, let's wrap this up and give us the last words.
Yes. Again, I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Flashback 1976. Len Wein, John Buscema, Joe Sinnott, Time Twisters, beautiful Asgardian quest. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. Boom!
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on Pop XP. If you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button and also click the bell for notifications when we go live and we upload some awesome new content. Also, don't forget to head on over to Twitter and follow us at the Pop XP and over on Instagram at the Pop XP. Thanks again everyone, and we'll see you soon.